You've tuned in to Tech Society, Perth's foremost podcast on tech and business, hosted by technical founders of Ninja Software and whiskey enthusiasts Alex Dunmo and John Nguyen.
And before we begin this episode, if you think tech can solve a problem for you, go and check out njs.dev. Ninja Software has Perth's top locally and homegrown software engineering and design talent, focusing on bespoke software for your vision.
Hey techies, welcome to another episode of Tech Society. You're with your hosts, Alex
and John.
And today we are speaking with Natasha Blycha, Global Head of Digital Law at Herbert Smith Freehills.
What did you think of this episode, Alex?
This was a fascinating episode and one where we actually had to just draw a line in the sand because otherwise we would have asked Natasha a million questions and been here till Saturday. Some really fascinating perspectives on digital hot topics like cryptocurrency, NFTs, smart contracts from a perspective of the law.
Yep, and we finally define what the metaverse is.
Well, yeah. Ready Player One, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was really cool when we spoke to Natasha today is that she covers all the questions I have about the legal framework around cryptocurrencies, crypto assets,
DAOs,
the things that you want to ask, you know?
Well, the things, actually, I would actually say it's the things you want to ask, but you actually don't know who to ask.
Yes, right.
Because if you ask anyone, even people in the community who think they know, they don't really know. Whereas Natasha really was.
She knows the tech and she knows the law.
Really sensed the curiosity and passion in this space, which I think is brand new from my perspective.
So anyway, great episode. Please check it out.
My name is Natasha Blycha. I am a technology lawyer that specialises in digital assets, and I currently am the global head of digital law at Herbert Smith Freehills, which is a big corporate global law firm. And in that role, I lead a new breed of lawyers. So those are lawyers who are interested in working with machines. And that could be extrapolated to say they're interested in working with algorithms. It could be that you could say they're interested in working with code. It could be that you're interested in saying they look at the legal issues that arise from working with machines. So that's basically what I do now. Where did I come from? Definitely not that. For many years I was a stay-at-home mum who looked after my 4 kids. And before that I was a competition lawyer. But
wow.
Definitely... In fact, I would say no one would write and say, while you're 18-year-old about to sit your final exams, which my daughter is now, they wouldn't say, you know what, the best career path for you should be to take 10 years off and, look after small kids. But in some ways that actually was the best career path for me because it meant that when I came back, I saw things in a very unique way. And I was able to say, what was the law like when I left? What did I think it should be like when I came back, based on more wide reading in my time off? And I probably had quite a unique viewpoint in the law.
You'd say time off, but I think continuing with law would have been easier.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. You have 4 children under 7. I've never worked as hard. So that's fair.
What is a competition lawyer?
So competition lawyer is monopolistic practices. So you're looking at consumer rights, competition and consumer law. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So I guess we'll just kick in. So you said that there's a new breed of lawyers that you work with. So are these, on average, younger lawyers who get gaming and tech, or is this something that they have to learn on the job? The new challenges of the new world?
It's an interesting question. So the answer is both.
Okay.
The reason I say both is because the law is going through its own digitalisation journey. So there isn't anyone who's exempt from needing to evolve to work with machines. And the analogue we tend to use is to say when the finance industry went through using sort of notes and coins to noughts and ones, that had impacts on how everyone has had to do their job around money. Same thing with the law. But if you were to say who are the most literate, I'd say younger people who are digital natives have got, more programming skills, more ability to think in logic-based methods. And there's certainly a good lot of the young men, particularly in my team, who I would say have good gaming skills, which make it a lot easier to work with predominantly with clients who are coming to you because they've got non-fungible tokens, that they're looking at the metaverse and they're looking at games. So there is everyone. The answer is everyone needs to be able to do it. We really work for diverse teams because I believe in diversity practically. So we try to get lots of different people in there. But then there is just young men who like gaming and coding, and that is a good cohort of very sophisticated younger people.
Wow, gaming, coding, lawyers.
It's
not the image in my head.
No.
You'd be surprised.
You mentioned non-fungible tokens. Is that seeming to dominate a lot of the conversations you're having currently?
It does. I mean, the market is talking about non-fungible tokens, but us, we speak more broadly about digital assets. So for me, I look at non-fungible tokens as just one category. Oftentimes I would consider it quite a simplistic digital asset. I start to get much more excited if you talk to me about smart legal contracts, because they've got that beautiful, rich mixture of natural language and code. And then get really excited about central bank digital currencies, because I think that is a whole new world we'll enter into once you have programmable money.
Wow, it's a lot of can of worms.
Yeah, I was going to say that's basically the podcast right there.
Yeah.
With the NFTs, in fact, actually with all of these topics, do you think Australian law is ready?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
But to be fair, no one's ready.
Yeah.
And the reason is the way I like to think about it is that we can call it the metaverse. That's some elegant language to describe this thing that's ahead of us, Web 3.0, this new domain that is a mixture of augmented reality, virtual reality. But when you enter any new land, there's always one of the first things that needs to be done is you need to lay down the law. You need to lay down the rules of the game, so to speak. And the same as going into a new country by entering into this pre-metaverse world, because we're not quite rich enough. Some of the games are starting to, if you talk to Epic Games or Facebook, we're starting to sort of touch on the metaverse. But at the moment, the primary difference from what the law is able to moderate now is it deals with static events. It deals with static assets. And when you go into this new world and you're dealing with digital assets, they've got some unique characteristics. The thing that stays the same is people like to own stuff. Okay?
Yeah.
But the thing that changes is in this world, here in the desk in front of me, I have my headband and I can say it's mine. It's the same thing. If this was in the metaverse, this headband could change shape. It could potentially, let's call it, get fat with data. As it travels through my history, it collects data toward it. So it's got a lot of complexity around the richness of the asset and that evolution of the asset over time. And the thing about data is in no country in the world can you own data. You can control data, but you can't own it. So with these digital assets, they change shape over time and they also accrue data to them. So that makes them reasonably complicated in order for us saying, I own it. And the first thing about law is it really does tend to try to protect people around ownership. So coming into the metaverse or the next generation of living inside gaming, playing to earn inside gaming models, buying clothes, buying assets in this new digital arena, the law isn't equipped in any country to tax that.
So that metaverse game better make sure that you can then bring those NFTs back into the game and play them as they've described them, right?
Well, here's where it gets really complicated, and I don't have the answer to this, and some very clever people are going to collectively smash brains and work it out. When you have a digital asset that is changing over time, and you are, everything at the moment in any kind of corporation, there's always a head. There's always somebody who's in charge. There's a person. The law makes a person responsible. A person is a company or a person. Okay, that's the law. When you come to some of these digital assets running on digital platforms, the furthest extreme being a distributed autonomous organisation or a DAO, what are we actually saying? We're saying there's no person or there's no head who's actually responsible. Then we pull it all the way back to some of these platforms. The platforms themselves, the people who are actually responsible, who set them up, they don't control them. And they can't actually see what's happening inside the platform, because who is running it? Is it a person? No, it's code. Okay, so here is the wrinkle in all of this, is if our laws have been set up to make somebody responsible, so if there's bad behaviour, that bad behaviour has somebody that the government can come against and say, you are responsible to stakeholders X, Y and Z for your bad behaviour. Now we're getting to a position where, quite rightly, you've got people in the crypto community who are saying, well, it's not me, because I can tell you I don't even know what's happening in there. I just set the thing up and I can't have custody over people's assets because I can't even see them. I'm distant from what's going on in there. It's a black box to me.
So just for our listeners, what is a DAO?
A DAO. Okay, so a DAO is not a legal entity yet. But it is a distributed autonomous organisation, so it's basically a type of structure that sits on a blockchain or a distributed ledger technology. But it is basically it's set up with a set of rules, or a set of logic-based rules. If this happens, do that. But it's the whole organisation is set up like that. So you don't have a directing mind and will of a human that is keeping the establishment of that organisation ticking along. And some people could say the Bitcoin blockchain is a bit like that. It's a good example of something that has been distant. There's not someone who's really individually running that. The law to date has treated DAOs like partnerships. That's not really fair, because the people who are running a DAO don't actually have the same level of mind and will and authority. Again, it's code that is actually running the show. Where that leads us is this part where I'm saying I don't know the answer. How do you make code responsible in the same way we made people responsible for bad acts, for paying their taxes? How do you do that? So there's got to be something ahead of us where we have some rules and standards about the integrity of code itself.
Wow,
it's a heavy topic.
Thorny.
It's a heavy topic, and it's got to do with the autonomy of machines.
My interest here is that the DAOs live on the blockchain, which do not live in Australia. So what happens when?
Kind of do.
Oh, not really. I mean, it's decentralized.
Everywhere, right?
Yeah, it lives everywhere at once. So what I'm getting at is, we're talking about Australian law. So, but we're talking about the metaverse, which sits on the internet. So what happens when suddenly many people in a DAO across many countries have which law are they responsible to?
It's a beautiful question. So this is one of the things that is a difference between when you look at this as a lawyer versus looking at it just as a technologist, is that if you are in the land, if you are in the country that you're in, if you're servicing clients in the country you're in, as a technology lawyer, I can tell you, I'll give you, if you're servicing clients in 20 jurisdictions, I'll give you a piece of advice that has 20 jurisdictions covered. That means, for example, with your cybersecurity requirements or your privacy law requirements, they will be explicit to the nation that you are servicing clients in. So even though it feels like it's spread across lots of countries and it's borderless and it's boundaryless, the law doesn't see it like that. You are absolutely responsible for laws inside the country, even if it's a distributed ledger technology, even if it's a distributed autonomous organisation. The law still applies. It's just that it doesn't know who quite to hold responsible. Yeah.
But I guess that doesn't actually stop the police, the federal police, holding you responsible.
Absolutely, and you can understand why. I mean, I'm quite fascinated by the philosophy of the CryptoPunk. I think, most people who sit in this industry, we got a bit of CryptoPunk in us. That's exciting. Some of it actually comes from long-term conservatism, is making sure that you are on the arc, you understand what's coming next. But I don't fall into the category of people who are completely libertarian. I'm quite happy to take benefit from public roads and public hospitals and public schools. So if you don't agree to this system where you're paying taxes to a country. If you don't agree to certain levels of governance and you're opting out, you kind of that doesn't work. Well, you can't have an entire industry that's jumping outside of some pretty well-established democratic functions.
Has there been any legal tests of a DAO in Australia?
We talked about it recently. So you might have been following, there's been a Senate inquiry led by Senator Bragg that has actually asked questions around this. And I've been involved personally in 2 submissions for Herbert Smith Freehills and the Digital Law Association. And both of those we made recommendations that the DAO be recognised as a legal entity. That's pretty on the edge. That's out there. But ours again comes from a position of conservatism, because it's saying, well, what's the counterfactual? If you don't have these things are happening. They're increasingly happening. You need to bring them within the law. Yeah.
So politicians are looking at it today, Senator Bragg, for instance, and is there a risk of the advisors to these people misunderstanding the core of what cryptocurrency and DAOs do? Because what I'm getting at is that most people don't actually get this space. You clearly do. I'm concerned about misinformation being shared at the top in the leadership of the country. How do we
Even people in this space spread a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
And ignorance.
How do we maintain the quality of information to the right people?
So I've got goosebumps, which I consider to be my signal from the universe that we're on to something quite important here. So I would say my biggest concern is literacy. My biggest concern is that most people have no idea what we're talking about.
Yes.
Even the people who are going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy for why people don't understand, is because I think that we are approaching a pivot point in the history of humanity where most people are unable to arbitrate all the information that's coming to them. So to do your normal job, if you're a regulator or you're a member of parliament or you're head of a mining company, just to do your normal job, not to upskill, not to learn about new complex things, that's already taking up a lot of your bandwidth. When we do presentations, we'll ask people who feels overwhelmed by how much information that they're trying to moderate, and most people will tell you they feel overwhelmed. Okay, so where does that lead us? I use the analogue again. In law, we have a process called discovery. So if there's going to be a case, then we will look at all of the conversations, all the emails, all the letters, and we see what is the actual history or the underlying facts of the case. That used to be like 1,000 documents. Now it could be, 100 million documents, and that's not hyperbole. So the breadth of information, and now in order to do that in the law, we use something called technology assisted review, and the courts have said it's actually, you can't use people to do it, it's too expensive and they're not accurate enough. So machines are the only way to be able to look at all that information.
So you don't have a room full of interns anymore?
No, I mean, you still do, but they use machines because they can't get across it.
It's too much.
Follow the same logic, is that how many platforms are you on getting information? Signal, WeChat, WhatsApp, Facebook. It's intense, and your emails are just ever growing.
Wait, what's my
your unread 10,000 emails?
29,000. There you go.
So
my inbox is 0 at the moment.
Okay, but maybe that's why you're in the room. So the point being of all of this is, we are approaching a point in time that we're only kind of got the last people clinging onto the edges with their fingernails, who are probably pretty good at comprehension and really good at covering a lot of material very quickly. One other category of persons who don't have any responsibility. And unfortunately or fortunately, when you read the demographics, young men who don't have families and don't have children and don't have to sort of look after lots of other people still have enough time to skill up and learn these things. So if you have not enough people, where do we get to? We need to get to a position basically where we have digital twins of ourselves who act as our executive assistants, triage all our information and just bring you what you need to know.
I've always loved that episode of Black Mirror where he trains
that's pretty dark, man.
The digital clone, she's basically torturing her.
And she opens the windows and orders groceries and stuff. For the real one.
That's my dream.
That's kind of it's terrifying, and it's also inevitable, right? because at the moment most people cannot handle information, and that means, and this is what I can tell you, without disclosing too much, I'm in the rooms of the places, I sit with the people who are making the decisions, and they've got a lot of learning to do, and they've got a lot of other responsibilities. They're not trying to be evil. There's just too much to learn.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Now that we're talking about policy making, Australia's come into the limelight a few times recently, either through the what's it called, the social media one, the banning of encryption.
Where they can actually
modify your social media posts and stuff.
And I think it's without a court order as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of from the public perspective, scary stuff happening. Do you have any deeper, perhaps behind the scenes insight you can give us on?
I think I do. I actually think I do. So one of the things that I do in our job is we write human rights policies.
Yep.
And you might have come across these as ESG type policies where big companies, tends to be generally big companies, will say how they want to look after people's rights. And there's so many different rights in a community. And I'll give you this example. When I get involved, it'll usually be for tech companies. So I'll write human rights policies for technology companies. It's an ethical minefield to look after people. Okay. So when I'm writing a human rights policy for social media company X, and I say, okay, we want freedom of speech. We want people to be able to say what they want. This is really important. This is a fundamental right. Okay, so hold that here.
Yeah.
It's in your left hand. We want content moderation. We don't want people putting anything on there that's dark. We don't want people suiciding. We don't want to see people murdering people. We don't want to see child pornography. Oh, okay. Well, we hold that in your right hand. Okay. I would like for no one to collect any data about me at all. I want to be hidden when I'm on my social media. But actually, I really like it when you provide me examples of the type of posts that I like to see. So my point being, in all of these things, there is a weighing up. Yeah. And we as humans, we weigh up this stuff all the time. And governments have come up with laws to weigh up different stakeholders in the community. But when it comes to, again, this new metaverse, this new modality, that still has to be done. And I think that's a part that makes me a little bit worried when we don't have diverse people in tech, and especially in the crypto industry, is because you kind of miss that nuance. And the devil's in the detail of making sure you're building tech that meets the needs of not just one stakeholder.
What is the metaverse?
Let's
I have a gist, but for our listeners,
okay,
we've talked about it a few times. Hopefully we can cut this and put this in the beginning, but what is the metaverse?
Okay, so last week, I think I've said I've got 4 children, and my youngest one is in year 6 in primary school. And last week I had the privilege of, they had Science Day, and I got to come in as a pseudo computer scientist to explain to them the question of the metaverse.
Cool.
And it was just glorious because I think I presented to about 200 year 5s and year 6s over the course of the morning about the metaverse, and I started off showing them a clip from Ready Player One.
Everyone always goes to Ready Player One, absolutely.
And it was really easy for them to understand what the metaverse was because they had either already seen or read Ready Player One, or alternatively, they've played Fortnite. Okay. So most young children have played. So for me, what's the metaverse is if you take what you imagine to be a game and you layer that game with increasing levels of complexity and richness, you can buy and sell, you can grow, you can live, and you can work. So you can trade, you can exchange, you can have money. They're all of those things. It is literally a digital parallel universe or a digital twin to humanity.
That's cool.
So I guess the only difference...
It's like a closed economy on its own.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the only difference between now and 20 years ago is you can actually make money in these games, in these kind of...
Yeah, let's talk about that
realities.
Because this is, again, from a legal point of view, massively interesting. So that's right. So in the law, when I try to describe to someone whether they should know that they're breaching the law or not in respect of their fundraising of cryptocurrencies, we talk about the example of if you go and play, God, I always forget the name of this. What's the gaming shop that you go into when you play?
Time
Zone.
Zone.
Time Zone.
Yeah.
You go into Time Zone, you get a token or a little card, and you can play the basketball game, you can play the little car driving or Donkey Kong or whatever, and any of those games, you use the tokens to be able to play them. You paid your money over, you get a token. When you leave Time Zone, you can't go and buy hot chips at the shop next door with those tokens, can you?
True.
Okay?
Yep.
That is how gaming has always been till now, and the governments in most countries will say to you, if you're doing that with your tokens, just keeping them inside, only using them for your games, that's what we informally call a utility token. It's not regulated because you're just using it inside your system. It's not trying to be outside.
And no one can trade it for other
That's right.
currencies, right?
But what has happened now and I don't think the metaverse is one place. I actually think it's could be increasingly levels of hyper-connected feudal economies, really, is that these tokens are jumping the building. In between layers of Uniswap, SushiSwap, digital currency exchanges, there is all these bundles of tokens, and NFTs are being used as part of the bundles to be able to move things from one shop to another shop, from one game to another game. And to finish off the point you made about play-to-earn models of gaming, is I had some of the kids just big, wide-eyed at this primary school because they're saying, do you know that since COVID hit in the Philippines, Philippines has obviously been a country where people, it's a high remittance country where people send their money from other countries back. They work overseas and send money back.
Yeah.
COVID hit, people can't do that as easily anymore. So you've got a whole bunch of people employed, in inverted commas, in the Philippines now playing to earn inside gaming because they can take the money out. So they're developing or they're playing games in order to feed their families.
It's Axie Infinity, right? I think
That's the main one. That's the main one, yeah, I believe.
So if so again, coming back to the law, what does the law say about employment? Do these people have the protection of the law in their employment? There's all these really sophisticated ways we've worked to protect people. If you're in the metaverse, does it not apply? And the kids we would ask questions of the children in this arena and say, well, is the metaverse real? And they go, no. I said, does it need rules? No, it's not real. I said, hold on. Okay, so you've spent 20 hours building something in Fortnite. Can I just break it? Do you mind? No, I don't want you to break it. I go, so you do think it's yours? Well, hold on, do you think you own it? Oh, okay. Oh, well, do you want me to not let anyone get it? Okay, well, then we better. And it was the most beautiful moment, and I swear this little girl had not been primed for this. Well, she'd probably been primed by me, but she hadn't been. She was coming to this conclusion herself. At the end of it, she sat there and she said, well, if we're building the metaverse, and it's kind of like what we are now, does that mean we're already in the metaverse? And I was like, out of the mouths of babes.
Full Matrix level stuff.
So you red pilled her.
Yeah.
It's just she's waking up from the controls of the Matrix.
No, I did. I said, just do not go. Everyone, do not go home and tell Mummy and Daddy that Mrs. Blycha told us we're all living in the Matrix.
That's really interesting.
Doesn't that mean that the next generation, they get it much quicker, right? They're already playing Fortnite, Minecraft.
Are they too embedded in it, though, where they can't see what it was like without it? So they don't understand that maybe protections from the old world should carry into the new world.
I've got this thing where I'm trying to write a bunch of short science fiction stories that touch on the law. And I have this scene in my head, and it's in one of the stories. And there's a little girl and she's walking on the beach and she's holding hands with her grandparent, but she's got dinosaurs walking on the beach with her, and she turns down the sound of the seagulls to increase the volume of the dinosaur next to her. And then it says that the post-metaverse children don't have a conception of augmented reality. To them, it's just all reality. So I think that actually that will increasingly emerge, especially as haptics technology increases.
Yeah.
Does that terrify or inspire you?
It probably terrifies me more than it inspires me because our bodies are not terribly good at staying still. So that misalignment between limbic system and what's happening in your mind, a hyperstimulation in the mind without bodies. We haven't quite evolved for that yet.
Back to the back to the questions on the economy. How you said that is hyperinflation isn't happening, that kind of stuff. Does that mean the economy is actually much more resilient than people expect, or is it actually much more fragile and on the brink of collapse? What's happening?
Such simple questions.
No, but the problem is the answer to that is both as well.
Yeah, because you said that money's been pumped in, but nothing actually happened. Does that mean it's like real resilient?
I'll use I think humanity is reasonably resilient. I mean, but for a climate change event, which we did, it's too big for us to moderate. I read a book a couple of weekends ago. I am an avid lover of books, and the way I get unique content into my brain is I'm a relentless op shopper. So every weekend I go into an op shop and I see it as the universe granting me with whatever I'm meant to read, and I'll probably grab 3 or 4 books. And I was lucky enough a couple of weekends ago to pick up one, which was, maybe it's 4 weekends ago, a 1963 book called I, the Aborigine. So it was an Aboriginal man who was writing in first person in the 60s. So it wasn't really as politically correct as what you would write now. It didn't have the layerings, but it was him in first person. And he had gone, he talks about all these things in here, and I'm like just dying of excitement reading this stuff, because he's giving us a view into somebody who 100% lived up to his first passes of his adult life completely devoid of any interaction with white people or Western civilization. And he says, as an adult for the first time, seeing a society that needed money to function was really mind-blowing for him, because there was no such thing as money in Indigenous culture in the tribes that he was responding. But, if you got food, you shared food. So the introduction of money, it's not like it's this highly sophisticated, relationships. We actually probably don't need it. I mean, we absolutely don't need it, but it's efficient. It takes frictions away, but obviously we can exist without money.
I think you'd have a lot less knowledge workers without money, though.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I'd be,
programmers
fashioning wood into things or something.
Blacksmithing.
Yeah. I think money allows for kind of complex value seeking, where the individual pieces don't really add a lot, but the entire company does. I don't think you could create a company from a barter system.
Well, I don't know.
I've never tried.
Yeah, I've never tried either. That's true.
but that's actually a real question, because that's where you come to when you say, well, you're being paid by cryptocurrencies maybe that is a form of barter. Because the reality is, if we said a non-fungible token is a representation of a piece of art, I can assure you people are using a piece of art, digital, to swap with a token X, which is meant to be used inside a game, game Y, as barter. That's just digital barter. But what it's actually done is it really has just made the interoperability of barter, instead of sort of clumsy requirements for one set of exchange rates, it's just thrown up the level by a factor of 10 and a vector of whatever it's added a complexity level. So I can swap anything at any time at just-in-time ability. So it really is almost like digital barter gone mad is what this next iteration of humanity might be.
Cool. So I am mindful of time, but I want to touch on what you mentioned right at the beginning, which was smart contracts, but legal smart contracts. Now, this is the first time I've heard of this. Can you please talk more on that?
I can. So this is actually my specialty. So if you say, Natasha, when you're not just talking crap about everything else, what do you actually talk about? This is the thing that I'm paid to talk about.
Right.
So that is the digitization of a legal contract. So what's different about it is at the moment, even if you think of a contract as a Word document, it's still not machine readable, and it still doesn't have executable code contained in it.
Yep.
So the next generation of contracts, we call them smart and legal contracts, but you could call them digital contracts, Lord knows. Just think of it as the same as this generation from a note and coin, and then it ends up all the way to programmable money, digital money. Think of the same thing happening with legal contracts. The reason that they're really powerful is because they can perform operations. So I can use my contract to be able to check if a delivery's been made and then execute payment. I could use my contract then to be able to basically stick an executive assistant inside the contract who has a perfect memory and does everything you tell them to do. And then my contract might, for example, send me a notice and say, do you want to buy this? Yes or no? Do you want to have your contract connect into your back-end ERP systems of your company? Why would you do that? As soon as you start having a contract that has a life that performs post-execution, so it's got an extra dimension to it now, think of it as a business or government. I have clients who have 1 million contracts. So you think of your heat map. If your contract is a packet of data that's monitoring your operations, where do contracts go? Your employment relationships. Contracts go to your business relationships. They go to your financing arrangements. There is nothing that contracts doesn't touch. They're one of the most ubiquitous rule-based, I suppose, packets of data in the economy.
I mean, even when you don't have one, there's usually an implied contract, right?
That's also true.
Yeah.
When you so this will be something that will be really watch this space over the next 10 years, but there are people now who are working on, and the thing that I've been working on is trying to build the plumbing based on a blockchain type analysis, but public permissionless blockchains are not very good for critical assets. So
Why do you say that?
Because of the rules around KYC, know your client, money laundering, and also, again, this problem of who's responsible. So if I'm going to be meeting my director's duties or my legal duties, I need to be able to really make sure that my contract's not sitting in a block with some child pornography, or I'm not sitting in a block with some money laundering activity that's happened in country X.
It's like driving a train through the Wild West. That's
right. So I can't do that. So I need to have clean, safe, a private permission blockchain, probably. But I think that will all disappear. People will just think of it as plumbing and ignore it. What they'll be most interested in is the other part is a big deal. Is something called right to erasure. So it's privacy. You might have heard of GDPR.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing about public permissionless blockchains is they're not very good at allowing people to take information off. And this is with these new plumbing for something like contracts, you're going to need to be able to keep contractual information private between the parties who have it. And you also need to be able to remove information or make changes.
That's where zero knowledge proofs. Yeah, thank you. That's where they would come into play, right?
I think so. I think that's right. But again, it probably is something where you'll end up with a regulated piece of infrastructure. Yeah. And my prediction is for you're going to start to see sovereign digital infrastructure in each country that looks after critical digital assets.
So do you foresee a future where our entire bureaucracy is managed by these I don't want to say blockchains because I think this is beyond that.
Smart legal contracts.
Yeah.
I think I probably would be too far down my own story to say it's all smart legal contracts. But do I think that in 50 years from now you will have complex webs of contracts that become oracles for each other? Absolutely yes. I do. And I think that also is a reason to keep your platforms and your infrastructure really carefully moderated to make sure that complexity doesn't break itself in the same way where we had automations in the financial crisis, where you actually had knock-on effects or waterfall effects because there was such a integration between different systems relying on each other for information.
So which country at the moment is there a country that's leading the charge in this whole digital asset space? Is it Australia? I assume not.
It's not. No, it's definitely not in Australia. I mean, there's so many clever people in Australia and so many people who get the issues, and there's people who are listening. But no, it's not Australia yet. It still could be because of the brains trust that's sitting here, but it's not yet. There's a small, really quirky regime that's been put together in Liechtenstein, which is super clever.
Okay, tell us about it.
So they've basically created a digital assets. They've worked on the principle that we're moving to the metaverse.
Okay.
And so then they've said, well, how would you, if you're basically creating digital assets as a horizontal, they're going to start touching all legislation everywhere. So they've created an actual act to deal with that. So that's possible because they've got a minuscule population.
They're very small, aren't
Very
they?
small. They don't have lots of layers of government
Yeah.
and different levels of government to work through, but they've been able to do that. And I think that, I don't remember the fellow's name, but I think there literally is just one really smart guy
Right.
who's been able to share the vision and craft that, which is amazing. Then Singapore is quite advanced.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a much more robust way of being able to register for some ways of doing digital assets, but it's still not perfect. And then maybe you could say Switzerland is more crypto friendly. But when I hear people wanting crypto friendliness, there's a part of them that just wants some of them just want a free for all.
Libertarian.
Yeah. So there's nowhere that gives, there's nowhere giving you that, unless again you come back to the Cayman Islands or the Virgin Islands, who don't really have any rules.
What about Estonia? Are they keeping up with their original momentum? I think they had the e-residency.
Yeah, they're real big on the digital,
Yeah.
citizenship stuff.
I won't lie, I haven't gone back and checked Estonia lately, but that probably would tell you that they're not necessarily
Cutting
Right,
edge.
cutting edge anymore. Yeah.
Well, they could be, but I may have just.
Yeah. Well, me
I don't want to diss the Estonians. They have some amazing stuff there.
Yeah.
I can't honestly say that I've run out of questions. I could probably ask you a million questions. I think we'll have to get you back and talk about specific things, because I've got like 30 more, 40 more questions. Easy.
That's good. That means we smashed brains.
That's right, yeah.
We have one last question. It's it shouldn't be the hardest question we've asked you today, but it might be. I don't know if you're a fan of wrestling, but
My husband is, so
fantastic.
I've got enough insight.
You've got some context.
Yeah.
So when the fighters come out and the lights go down, the smoke machine starts, their intro song plays. Their song, it embodies the character. What is Natasha Blycha's intro song? So I've booked you for a keynote, and I've asked you, what song would you like to play as you come out on stage?
This is not my definitive answer.
That's right.
But I do have someone had asked me something similar, so I'm going to rest on, because I just can't. I can't do this properly.
It's always a gotcha. I love it.
Yeah. There's something about Beyonce when she just goes feral power, female feral power.
Oh yeah.
That is very appealing, and then she's sung a song for a Disney movie, and I don't want you to just think of me as a Disney listener. I've got a very wide music taste, but something that's quite clean and edifying and beautiful, and she sings a song called Spirit. I don't even know if that's a title, but that's the word in there, and there's something in that appeals to the higher purpose of, I like that one. That's my wrestle song.
Nice.
Spirit.
That's good. That's a good choice. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That was
Nice to meet you guys.
Absolute pleasure, and we'll definitely have to get you back.
Sounds good.
You've made it to the end of another episode of Tech Society. Well, that was a great episode. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed making it. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter @Tech Society, head over to the website, subscribe to the newsletter.